you now have even job boards that are including ATSs. Don't forget that technology is constantly creating new stuff. All technology, just like how you would use Facebook or Instagram. You're
like, man, they always got a new update.
Well, it's the same thing with HRSs and ATS. People say, Tamika, where do I learn how to use an HRS? From that HRIS. Tamika, where do I learn how to use an ATS? From that ATS. Hey y'all, this is Tamika, the face behind Hey HR, and I am excited to tell you guys a little bit of like a ABC 1, 2, 3 type of video, but it's what is an applicant tracking system? We hear about the ATS all the time. We're gonna talk all about what it is, what are some of the common ones, and a little bit of the history of an applicant tracking system. If you want to know what an applicant tracking system is, then definitely keep watching. Now, the definition of an applicant tracking system is a software that gives you a variety of tools to automate many parts of recruiting and the hiring process. So it's literally just a software system. Just like how we may use a software system that goes with a cash register, or we may use a software system that goes with an inventory system. It's just something to help take the manual part out of applicant tracking or recruiting or the recruiting process, more easy to use, easier to kind of track who did what, easier to track where applicants are in the process, easier to track where applicants may have found this application from. So much easier to keep track of who needs an interview next, or who is declined, or who needs an email, or who needs a phone call. So it's definitely just one software system that just makes the whole recruiting process so much easier. Now, long ago, an applicant tracking system was initially most commonly, I'm not going to say they were the very, very first. I didn't do that deep of like research on the history. But long ago, I know the first places where I used to hear about an ATS is with the federal government. So when you applied with those federal government jobs, people would always talk about the scoring or your resume needing to be in there. USA Jobs is just, it's been around for eternity. It's still kind of old. They really don't update it as much as they could, but that's primarily where applicant tracking systems were most common. And so now private companies are using them more often, and it's being used primarily by companies that have 100 or more employees. Companies that have less than that really don't need it. If you're not really aggressively hiring or need a lot of, or have a lot of turnover, or need a lot of people, it's so much easier to just save those dollars, because applicant tracking systems can be pretty expensive. And so it's easier to just save those dollars, and typically people will find another system. The best manual system that I've used for applicant tracking systems was when I used Outlook. You know how you can send an application to like human resources at abccompany.com. So if you send that resume there, what you could do is, obviously you have the resume, a person will go in, check that inbox, look through that resume, and in your Outlook or your email, you can make several folders. Same like how an applicant tracking system, you can just click a button and put them there in a section of the applicant tracking system. Manually, you can say, okay, I have this folder, and this folder is for all received applications, right? Or you can put that this folder is for all cashiers, and then this folder is for all custodians, and then this folder is for all admin assistants. So you can make a folder with that job title, and within that folder, each folder can have multiple folders in it. You can have application received or need to be reviewed. You can have pending interview. You can have interview 1, interview 2. You can have rejected. You can have hold for later. You can like make folders within it. You can make decline or rejections, right? So now you know that I have already rejected these candidates. I have already scheduled these people for interview. So each time that person goes to the next part of the interview process, or your recruiting process, I'll say. So each time they go through the recruiting process, then you'll move them to the next folder until they get to rejected or hired. So typically when you get to hired, you take them out of that folder for that job description or that job title, and you literally will put them with a folder with their own name. You can have like a hired folder and then put like this person's name and then the date that they start. So that helps you keep track of who needs new hire orientation, who needs onboarding, who needs pre-employment paperwork, who's already had their physical. You can put hired and then put all those different phases with the hiring process, or you can put pre-onboarding, or you can put offer and then put all the stages that go with that. So that's mainly like the best, I'll say the best manual system that I use. I'm sure somebody would be like, nah, tell me we got a better system. But that's the best system that I use that was manual before I started using, but when I worked with a company that didn't have an applicant tracking system, or they had just, I'll say they just had started using it. We didn't have it implemented, but we had it. I actually found that to be super easy. I could keep track of my candidates with no problem. I knew who I rejected. I knew who was waiting on an interview. I knew every part of where that candidate was. Yeah, it took a little bit because I couldn't really search for their names, but it was good to just go in there and just see them. That's the manual system that I use. And the reason why I say that most companies who have 100 employees or more would have an applicant tracking system is because typically they have a higher budget. So they have the money to pay for it, first of all. Second thing is, most times when you get over 100 employees, you either have like consistent turnover or you're growing. So you expect that you're going to need something a little bit more clean, something that's going to take away some of your manual errors or your hand errors. So I only work with one company. Nope, I work with two companies that had less than 50 employees. One had an applicant tracking system. It was Bamboo HR. And then I work with another one and we implemented a system. We implemented JobVite. So I've worked with companies that didn't have them. I've worked with companies that had really outdated or old ones where I still found myself doing majority of it manual. But those were when I worked with the local government and city or municipality industry. They're not big on spending a bunch of money in the HR. HR is not a place where you get a lot of tax money from to pay for. So we kind of use like outdated systems, which required us using a lot of manual systems because outdated systems weren't really capable. If you're working in a private company that's growing, that has the budget, they're going to use applicant tracking systems. Let me give you some examples of applicant tracking systems. And I'm going to try here, what I tried to do with this list of examples was to give you examples of literally applicant tracking systems, because so long there were applicant tracking systems and then there were human resources information systems. Now human resources information systems are making applicant tracking systems a part of their process or a part of their system. It's dwindling down the number of just applicant tracking systems and increasing on the number of HRISs, because your HRIS should handle your entire employee lifecycle. I'm doing a video on that next, so definitely if you're not subscribed, hit the bell so you can learn all about HRISs. But with HRISs, they're now including more of the applicant tracking system, so there are less applicant tracking systems that do not do the entire employee lifecycle. Or I'm going to do a video on the employee lifecycle. I'm doing a video on both, to be honest with you. And so you definitely want to hit the bell and subscribe so you don't mess up either one of them. But you typically want a system where you can handle the entire employee life cycle, because I've been in HR for 12 years, and I'll say for the first 7 years of my career, I work with companies that use a partial HRS, a partial ATS, another system for benefits, another system for benefits enrollment, another system for payroll. Like, I had to log in and out of systems all day long. So when I finally got to a company that had a robust HRS, which was Paycom, man, I loved it. I can do every single thing with an employee there that I would need to do through the entire employee life cycle. That would go from performance reviews and pay increases and payroll. Like, everything we needed to do was in that one system. And that made me work so much more clear, because I wasn't constantly remembering passwords, resetting passwords, or getting a new password, or logging out of a system and having to log back in, or having 5 systems open and forgetting which employee I'm working with. And so I absolutely love an HRS. But some example of ATSs are the most common ones is JobVite. JobVite is a very, very robust ATS. It really handles an employee lifecycle really well. I've used it at 2 different companies in my career. We use it now and I used it years ago. And I have noticed that it's just gotten better in my opinion. And now it talks to more systems, but I wish it talked to even more systems. Greenhouse, Bamboo HR. Bamboo HR has limited HRS access, so you can send out like company announcements or payroll. There are parts of the employee life cycle that you can do. Unfortunately, I haven't worked with Bamboo HR where I can do everything, and I haven't heard good things about them where people feel like they can do everything in them, or that they're really robust. And then Smart Recruiters is another example. There are tons more. If you have an ATS, dedicated ATS system, put it in the chat. I'd love to know about more and more of them. So you now have even job boards that are including ATSs. When I say that, I'm talking about the systems you would use like Indeed. Indeed now has an ATS system in it where we can send out rejection emails. We can see who just applied. We can see who's in an interviewing process. We can see who got a job offer. It's not as robust as as a full ATS or an HRIS that has an ATS. Definitely, it's just a shocker to me to see Indeed grow because I've worked with Indeed like majority of my career and they never had that capability. Another one is LinkedIn. LinkedIn now has a bit of an ATS in it, not as aggressive. LinkedIn want to get a little bougie because they call themselves saying, we're not going to call it this or that, which are the common names, right? They're not going to call it applicant or job title or whatever. They call things like projects. They use some other lingos that I'm like, oh, now I feel like I'm kind of learning the ATS over again. I'm not a big fan of LinkedIn's ATS. Another thing is ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter now has it where you can do a little bit of the applicant tracking system or use applicant tracking system capabilities in it as well. All job boards that have embedded ATSs now. Some HRISs, human resources and information systems, that include ATSs, applicant tracking systems, are your Paycom, your Paylocity, your ADP, your Paycor, Workday, namely UKG. Those are some of your systems that have them both. I'm not sure about Greenhouse. I almost wrote them down because I found them in a list of just ATSs, but I've never used Greenhouse. So I think that Greenhouse is just an ATS. And there are tons more HRISs that have ATSs in them. Don't forget that, and I guess it makes sense to me because I work in the tech industry, but don't forget that technology is constantly creating new stuff. This is why you're seeing more people that are hired as product managers, that are hired as operations, technology operations, that's hired as engineers, that's hired as data folks, because all technology, just like how you would use Facebook or Instagram, you're like, man, they always got a new update. Well, it's the same thing with HRSs and ATSs. They are now just in a space where they're constantly improving, constantly changing. People say, Tamika, where do I learn how to use an HRS? From that HRIS. Tamika, where do I learn how to use an ATS? From that ATS, because they change so often. They all have their own capabilities. They all do things a tad bit different. It depends on which ones you're using between an ATS or HRS, if they can talk to each other. So now this may make it a little bit different when you get to onboarding or offering a candidate. Typically what I do when I work with a full HRS or a full ATS is I just say, okay, every year at this time in this period, I sit down and go through the trainings all over again. Or some systems will offer like monthly on-demand courses. Some will offer live webinars or masterclasses where they teach how to use their system. Some have recorded, like I said, on demand. Some of them have like little handbooks, like online handbooks, very good little online handbooks. They all have like what you call like a resource center or what have you to teach you constantly how to use their system. I know that Paycom was really good that they would have a monthly updates webinar or course. They would go live every month to tell you about the monthly updates. And then they got to a point where I think they just kind of slowed down on the updates. And so then they started doing a quarterly updates. Initially, when I was learning that system, I used to make it my business to learn the new updates. As I learned that system, got comfortable with it, was moving with it really fast, I started saying, okay, you know what? I need to look at what they're teaching. Like, what are the things y'all going to, what's on your agenda? And then that helps me determine if I should attend or not, because it was like, okay, well, I don't use that as often, so why attend the course? But I really love ATSs. I'm a big, big fan of an applicant tracking system. I have not found one yet that I hate. I think they all are phenomenal because I went so long in my career without one where it took us way longer to handle candidates or to get them through the hire process or to get through the recruiting process. That I'm just happy for every single applicant tracking system I see, even if it sucks. Just like at HRS, y'all have heard me on my vlogs complain about HRISs. I'll complain about it, but child, I'm happy I have it because I still remember the day I had to do paperwork and go from system to system and go into actual physical files. I'm just happy we have one. The next video is going to be on the employee life cycle. I'm also doing a video on, and I'm trying to think of things that just are basic because I'm doing a couple other videos in between as well, particularly some that follow my blog. So if you go to my blogs online, you'll see that I kind of do it as a blog and a video to make it a little bit easier for you guys. But I think I'm doing one on what's an HRIS. I just want you to know that if you are like, you know what, Tamika, this is good basic knowledge on an ATS, but I kind of wanted more high level stuff, then I have done a video on sourcing. How do you find these candidates to get them in the ATS? How do you find candidates for hard to fill positions? So I talked about what is sourcing. I'll make sure to not only plug it here, but I'll also make sure to put it in the description box. And then I also have a video on artificial intelligence and recruiting. AI is really being infused into these applicant tracking systems, and that's why we're able to use them so much quicker. That's why when you go to type something in, it's kind of guesstimating what you're looking for. AI and recruiting, I'll definitely put that here as well. To make this whole thing a little bit easier, I do have a recruiting and talent acquisition playlist. I'll put that playlist at the end of this video so you can just click on it. So for those of you who are new, I am Tamika Green. I have been working in HR for over the last 12 years. I started as an HR assistant, grew my way to an HR director, eventually an HR consultant, and now I happily sit as a global human resources business partner. I have not only an MBA, but I also have my master's in human resources management, and I have the highest level SHRM certification, the SHRM SCP. And so I say all of that to say that you're going to find some of the best human resources information right here with HR. So if you haven't already, I hope that you consider subscribing and hitting the bell so that you don't miss new videos. For those of you who are returning, I thank you so much for returning. I just cannot wait to see all of y'all on the next video.